Let's get right into it. What we're looking at here isn't just a temporary slump for experienced workers in Australia. No. The data is pointing to something much deeper, a full-blown structural crisis. And it's being fueled by what you could call a perfect storm of three powerful forces all hitting at the exact same time. I want you to start with just one number, 20 months. Just let that sink in for a second. And remember that number, because it's right at the very heart of this entire story. So what does 20 months mean? Well, it's the average amount of time it takes for a worker over 55 to find a new job after they've been let go. Now, compare that to younger workers, just 9 months. That's an 11-month penalty. That is a massive gap, a chasm really, that pushes so many of these experienced people into long-term unemployment. So why is this happening right now? Well, the first force in this perfect storm is a cooling economy, and what that's done is create what you could call a really brittle workforce. See, the Australian job market has definitely cooled off. Unemployment has kind of settled into this new normal of about 4.5%. Now, that might not sound like a disaster, but what it really means is that the competition for every single open job has just gone through the roof. And here's the key takeaway from that. The power has completely flipped. Not long ago, it was a seller's market. Companies were desperate for good people. Now, it's a buyer's market. Employers have all the power. And this basically gives them permission, a structure, to lean into hiring biases that they had to suppress when they couldn't afford to be picky. And this creates a really strange paradox. You've got this group of workers, right? And they're more engaged than ever before. Participation rates are at an all-time high. But at the same time, they have the lowest job mobility of any group. They're essentially locked into their roles, which makes them incredibly vulnerable. A single layoff can be absolutely catastrophic. Okay, so you have this brittle workforce. Now, crashing right into them is the second wave of the storm, a deep, systemic wall of ageism. And you might think of it as a soft barrier, but believe me, it comes with devastatingly hard costs. Just look at this. It's actually shocking. In only 2 years, the percentage of HR managers who consider someone between 51 and 55 to be an older worker has more than doubled. It's jumped from 10% to 24%. The goalposts for what's considered old are moving, and they're moving really, really fast. So what happens then? Well, it creates what researchers are calling a precarity gap. It's this huge 16-year window where you can be seen as too old to get hired, but you're still nowhere near old enough to get the age pension. You're effectively trapped in this professional no man's land, part of a lost cohort. And this isn't just a perception. You see it plain as day in the hiring numbers. Almost 80% of employers say they're open to hiring someone in their late 30s or 40s. But the second you cross that 50-year-old threshold, boom, the number just falls off a cliff. And that brings us to the third, and maybe the newest force in this storm, unregulated AI. It's acting like a massive accelerant on the fire. It's a dual threat. It's causing displacement, and it's supercharging discrimination. This is where this idea of the algorithmic veil comes in, and it's a really important concept. It's when companies use AI and what they call objective data to make their hiring and firing decisions. It gives them this data-driven cover for what is, let's be honest, often just old-fashioned ageism. And the legal side of this is really serious. As this analysis points out, this high-tech mask makes it incredibly difficult for someone to challenge a decision. I mean, think about it. How do you prove that an algorithm was biased against you? And this all leads to a huge critical paradox. You see, companies are obsessed with what they call AI proficiency, knowing how to write a good prompt. Younger workers might be better at that. But what they're ignoring is AI judgment. That's the decades of real-world experience you need to look at what an AI spits out and say, wait a minute, that's not right, that's not ethical, or that's not compliant. They are literally firing the exact skill they need to manage the massive risks of AI. It's incredible. And here's the kicker. The companies are creating this skills gap themselves. Most workers are using AI now, but only about a third of them have gotten any formal training from their boss. So employers create the gap, and then they use that very same gap as the reason to let their experienced, and often more expensive, staff go. Okay, so we've laid out these three forces: a cooling economy, systemic ageism, and unregulated AI. Let's talk about the human cost. What actually happens when these things collide in the real world?
And this is not theoretical. The data shows a direct causal line. A woman over 55 gets laid off. Ageism, both human and algorithmic, blocks her from getting a new job. That 20-month job search, remember that number? It completely drains her life savings. And, tragically, the final step for too many is homelessness. This is why women over 55 are the fastest growing group at risk of homelessness in the country.
And even if you avoid that worst-case scenario, the financial hit is just staggering. A 20-month period with no work means zero contributions to your superannuation. For an individual, that can mean a loss of up to $136,000 from the retirement nest egg. It's a devastating financial blow right at the finish line of your career. So the problem is obviously massive. What are we doing about it? Let's take a look at the current solutions on the table and see how they really stack up against the scale of the crisis.
Well, the government's main solution for this entire group of people is a co-funded skills grant. And the value of that grant? $2,200.
Which really begs the question, right? If the root of the problem is systemic bias, if it's baked into how we hire, both as humans and with our algorithms, is a $2,000 skills grant really the answer? There seems to be a pretty profound mismatch here. And all of this is happening in what experts are calling a regulatory void. There are literally no specific laws in Australia right now that govern the use of high-risk AI in employment. It's the Wild West out there, and employers are using these tools without any real oversight or accountability.
So the report's recommendations are very clear and very urgent. First, we need to legislate that AI used in hiring and firing is a high-risk activity. Second, we need to mandate independent bias audits for all HR tech. And third, we have to amend the Fair Work Act to make it crystal clear that employers are liable for the decisions their algorithms make.
It all leaves us with this one final critical question. In this new age of automation, as we race towards efficiency, what is the true value we are placing on decades of human experience? Are we prioritizing proficiency over wisdom? That's the core tension we really need to resolve.